with Hashem's help, we're going to jump back into what we were learning about 2 weeks ago. And we'll give a little bit of a review, just for a minute or two, just to get us back into the last thing that we were speaking about. If you have the sheets in front of you, we're on page Lamed Gimel, on the top left hand of the page. And we were speaking about this idea of nachas ruach, right? What it means to cause a nachas ruach, to give Hashem pride, right? Thanks for coming. To give Hashem nachas. And not just stam, you speak about giving Hashem nachas. We all learn this concept, right? We want to bring nachas ruach to Hashem. But on a much more specific level, we learn about this idea of causing Hashem nachas in the context of understanding that a real relationship needs to be, remember, reciprocal, right? Where it's not just one giving and one taking, but rather there's an aspect of taking on the part of both parties, right? And so we learned that if you think about it, ordinarily we constantly perceive ourselves to be receiving from Hashem, right? He's giving and we're taking all the time. But then you think about it, wait a second, we're giving him nachas ruach, right? And so just in very classical Jewish texts, you see this idea of God receiving something in some way, right? We're giving Hashem something that ostensibly, he, again, in some sense, he wouldn't have had otherwise. We're giving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this idea is clarified. We just started. Thank you for coming. Right. So we clarified that this idea of nachas ruach is, nachas means like to cause pride to Hashem, but we learned that in Aramaic the word nachas can connote the idea of a nachis darga, if you remember. Right. We spoke about this idea of nechis, which means to, you remember? It means to go down, it means to sink. Nechos darga. Thank you for coming. Right. It means to lower oneself. And in some sense, this that we're giving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Isha Reach Nichayach LaHashem, we bring a carbon. All of Tefillah is a carbon, right? There are 3 Tamidim each day. The Tamid Shal Bein Arbayim, the Tamid Shal Shacharis, and this is Keneged. This is paralleled by the 3 Tefillos that we have that are all instituted to mirror the karbanos that we don't have the opportunity today to bring karbanos. But a tefillah is a carbon. We said what's a carbon? It's not a sacrifice. We said it's the word karban, means to bring close, and that somehow is bringing a reach nichoach, a nachas ruach to Hashem, which means that in that moment, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is receiving. And in receiving, it's in a certain sense, you remember, it's not just about us being lifted up to meet him. He comes down in a certain way, as it were, and presents himself as not only giving, but also as receiving. And that's very crucial for there to be a true relationship. That was the last thing that we learned. We'll just read the last line over there. Hainu sha'Hashem yizbarach kiviyachol, if somebody doesn't mind just clicking on lock. Thank you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu lowers himself in order to be in position, so to speak, to receive. Not just to give, but also to receive from his creatures. And this is the depth of the meaning of what it is to give Hashem pride, to give Hashem nachas, to give Hashem pleasure. Remember that the word nachas isn't just that God is getting pride, but in so doing, Hashem is nechos. Hashem is sort of lowering himself in some important way. Lashon, again, nechos darga, which means to lower oneself. Okay, now let's push a little bit forward with Hashem's help. We'll see how far we can get, which, based on the previous class, is not probably going to be very far, but we'll do our absolute best. Okay? Says the Hiliger of Kluger, says the Tzaddik, Ki yesha mitzav levnoi lasas avurai, begeder tzivoy. He says, imagine there's a father who wants the son to do something for him, and he commands the son to do something for him, in a way of a tzivoy, right? In a way of a genuine command. Va'az, and in that experience, noisar ha'av liyos elyon me'ala ben. The father will always be higher up, so to speak, than the child, right? He's the one who's commanding, and the child is doing what the father asked. The father remains the father, the child is a child. And that's the relationship, right? The father requested something to be done, and the child does what the father asks. But this isn't comparable to a completely different circumstance where the father requests that the son does a certain thing, and then adds loymar to tell this child, you're going to bring me so much pride and so much pleasure. It's not just time, take care of something arbitrary. No, it's that the father wants something specific and he entrusts the son to do it for him. And he makes it clear to the son that in so doing, it isn't just, again, fulfilling something technical that he could have done himself. this will bring me nachas, right? A person tells his child, if you try extra hard, it's difficult for you, whatever it is, something in school, something at home, and we're going to be so proud of you, right? So bakasha kazois, that kind of request, kvar mispates kesher. Already there's the revelation of a deeper sense of relationship here than stam, a person telling someone else what to do, because again, you don't have to have a relationship with the guy at the post office, to take your parcel and to put it in a box. There's no relationship there. This is his job, this is your job. I spent a lot of time today, I was trying to fix my WhatsApp on my phone, very regrettably, because it was pretty nice the last week to be free, and now I see all the messages are loading, and it's like, oh gosh, I have to dig myself out of this. But I was on the phone with all these customer service representatives. We have to make the code known. It's so disruptive. So it's nobody's fault, but just if possible, that anybody who's new, make sure if you can to get the code for the next time. So you're thinking about it. They ask, is there anything you could help me with? Of course you could help me. I want you to recognize that the world was created by Hashem, and I want you to know that every little good thing you do brings light to the world. And I want to spend hours on the phone with you, getting to know you, because another human being, what a privilege to speak to somebody. But the way that our society is set up is that it's not a time for a relationship. He wants to know if he can help me with my SIM card from Google Fi. He doesn't want to know, what he can help me with existentially. It's a very limited context, and it's regrettable sometimes. In my old days when I had a little bit more time, I would try a little bit. There was one shoe store in America called Zappos. I don't know if they're still around. But I was having a whole back and forth with them about some shoes that I ordered, and it wasn't the right size, and will they take it back? And I opened it, whatever it was. And then at the end, I just, once I have someone, might as well throw in, especially in the middle of their workday. So I left this whole message about how she should, keep shining and bringing light to the world, and it's such a dark world, but every little bit of light and a whole thing. And you know something? The next week, my father's still convinced it was like for marketing or whatever, but I got a handwritten card from Zappos, which I don't think that they sent to everybody, basically saying, in the world, whatever, it was a handwritten card from this lady that somehow got my address from the thing, saying that in a world full of just transactional business relationships, it was so refreshing to hear there's a human on the other end, It's just a thought. But generally, would you like a sheet? Somebody doesn't mind passing a sheet? A sheet's up here. Thank you. So, amazing, yeah? Okay. But that's not the way of the world. That's not, if the halavai, the world would run that way, but nothing would ever get done. So stam, a person's, at a work day, it's just for work, right? But those relationships are transactional. But imagine over here when the father is saying to the son, I'm going to get so much nachas from this. That means that the father needs something from the son deeper than something technical, where I happen not to be working at the post office, so I can't simply go and fill out all the forms myself and send it and make sure it goes where it gets. Right? This is something more. There's a relationship. There's a kesher. So he says, "Bakasha kazois kfar mispates kesher." There's already something deeper here. Hainusha av, again, nachas. Nachas means to sink a little bit, like lower. Nachas madrigasai le'aseh shava elav bekoima v'lekabel himenu. The father is in some sense on a level, right? There are levels and levels and levels, but in some sense the father is revealing a vulnerability in relation to the son. And the father is saying that if you don't do this for me, no one else can do this for me. Right? Again, it's not just a technical thing. It's that this son matters to me in such a way that if he's not successful, I'm missing something, because there's a relationship here that's deeper than just on the surface. And that comes out of the fact that the father is not just in a position of giving, like we're learning, the father is in a position of also receiving. And he has a stake in the life of the son, right? And that speaks about a deeper layer to the relationship. As if he's saying, Hine ani chaser. It's basically saying, I am lacking. Va'ata, and you alone. Sheyesh biyadcha lamalois chasroini. It's not a person makes an order, a different mashal on Deliveroo, and it doesn't make a difference to you which Ahmed or whatever else it is who's coming to bring the food. It doesn't matter to you. As long as somebody comes and brings the food, you don't have a relationship with the person. They knock on the door, they ask you for the code, you give the code, and that's it, right? But that's not what's going on here. What's going on here is that the father is telling the son, it's not just something that I need done. It's that you are the only person in the world that's able to give this. From that standpoint, in relation to you, meaning in relation to the Son, the Father says, I'm fundamentally lacking. Only you can fulfill this. And in that sense, there's a very deep bond, right? That's created specifically when each one shows up with their lack, right? The Son needs the Father needs the Son. So, right, you and you alone, again, have the capacity to fill this lack. And if that's the case, if this is true about our relationship with Hashem, because that's what we've been learning about. If you remember the previous year, Hashem trusts us. He gives the whole world into our hands. We have to recognize that it's up to us, mamish, to step up and stand up and take control. And that's the whole message, that it's really up to us. So kal v'chaymer b'yichud b'kerav Avram. It's certainly true for interpersonal relationships, right? If it's true for Hashem, then in order to make sure that our relationship with Hashem is really deep and we don't just feel all the time that we're just in the position of receiving and so it's pretty one-sided, so then it's certainly true between people. If you want a real, authentic relationship, it has to be in such a way where each one is doing something for the other and each one is showing up with a vulnerability, right? Making it clear to the other that I need you. And that's a real relationship where that's true on both sides. Sheshleimus hadavar, that the ultimate completion, the pinnacle of a real relationship, nase, is accomplished mitoich shegam hamikabel noisen mishalai, where the recipient is not the only one who's receiving, but is also giving. Umikoyach kach nasim koima achas. So then they're equal, and when they're equal, so then there could be a real relationship. I'm so sorry. Right? Then there could be a real unity, a unity among their hearts. Now, kasher tzad echad margish, when one side feels, right, in every relationship, whatever it is, kitzad beis yoser chazak mimenu, that the second side is stronger than, or more superior than, or more powerful than, right, and is never needing to give. Is never needing rather to receive, is always in position of giving, and doesn't show up from a place of needing, right? So sometimes we can imagine a friend like that, right? Who the whole time is just giving and giving advice and giving, and there's something missing, because you don't want to always be in position to take. You also want to be in position to give, and that's a real friendship. Otherwise, somebody's lecturing to you. So it's not what you want to have a real relationship. Mean there's a give and a take, right? And that's true for every kind of relationship. So when a person doesn't feel that that's present, as I margish klapov, so then the whole time this person's going to feel nechais biyoser, just really pushed down, suppressed, repressed. Person doesn't feel like they're shining in the relationship. A person is just being given to all the time. There's something missing. But when the giver is able, even even when the giver is actually fulfilling the need of the mekabel, so go back to our initial parable, right, with the person collecting tzedakah. You get the tzedakah, you get a big check, 1,000 pounds, whatever. But there's something missing. Because again, the standpoint of the receiver is constantly feeling empty, even if he has. But in the having is something empty, because that person always feels like they're standing on the threshold, knocking on the door. It's not a real relationship, because all they are the whole time is just receiving. He says, good, the giving will have been successful, but it will never bring to yichud. It will never ever bring to true intimacy. It will never bring to oneness, because there will always be this imbalance. Thank you so much for coming. Great to see you. Right? There will always be this imbalance. Biram, however, after it becomes clear to the receiver, that the other side also needs, and again, we've been speaking about this the whole time in lots of different ways, just to review real quick, that the person giving also is receiving, is also getting something. It just so happens to be that in this circumstance, Reuven needs to receive from Shimon, But it doesn't mean that Shimon is fundamentally the giver. Shimon also has needs. And that they're able to fulfill each other's needs in that way, right? Where each one is both giving and receiving. Because tomorrow, the person who's now in a position of giving will actually need from the other person. Doesn't mean that he'll need money per se, but we'll need something else, like we said, remember? Right? We'll need encouragement, we'll need strength, we'll need friendship, we'll need someone to confide in, whatever it is, we'll need advice. So then again, there's an equality here that just isn't present when someone's up here all the time and the other person's always down here. They can't have intimacy like that. They'll have some kind of relationship, but not true friendship, right? Not true oneness. But when there's a level playing field, right? Either because the giver is brought down to the level of the receiver, and at the same time, right, the receiver is brought up to the level of the giver, then there's equality. When there's equality, things match up, then there's able to be a connection. Then they are level one with the other, and then they could be in position to receive this one from the other, like we say about the malachim, right? They receive from each other. And that's the relationship that they each have. There's no fighting, there's just oneness between them, right? Because each one is both in position to receive as well as to give. Now we come to one of the most powerful paragraphs I think that we've learned thus far. And it's so crucial and it's so important. And it's really like a paradigm shift. He says, in every situation, in every circumstance, Hanoisen toya. He says people in positions of influence make a mistake, lachshov, when they think, she'im yegale chulsha, that if they reveal some degree of weakness, if they reveal some degree of vulnerability, that they show up in such a way where it makes people feel that they're not maybe perfect, then yafchis michvoidai. Then something of that person's respect, honor, glory will be lost. This is what they think. Could go in Rav, right, like a Rebbe, or a Rav, or a Rosh Hashiva, hamakbid lehisgalus l'fnei hatalmid, rak b'shas gadlus, who will only reveal him or herself, let's say, in the case of a Rebbetzin, whatever it is, to her students or to his students, only when he's in a position of strength, right, when things are going well for him, and when he knows he'll be able to teach properly and give over properly, and only what's called shas gadlus. Why? Ki yare, because he's afraid, she'im yiro bekatnus, if they see that he's also human, and he also struggles, and he's also battling with A, B, C, or D, and he also has a bad day from time to time, so then shuv lo yikabel himenu, that nobody's going to want to accept and receive from him. Because they'll think, because he thinks, or she thinks, that the only reason anyone wants to be makabel from them is because they must think that I'm perfect. And if I show that I'm not perfect in one way or another, so then no one's going to want to receive from me anymore. And he says there's no greater sheker. There's no greater delusion. It's totally false. Because he says on the contrary, if a person does this, ach bazeh mafsid mimenu umin hamekabel es ar hayichud ha'amiti b'neihem. He says on paper it might look wonderful, and on paper the students might think that the teacher is perfect, and they'll go with their delusion and he'll go with his delusion. But you know what will be missing? There will never be a real yichud between them. It will only be, again, on some level, surface, shallow, transactional. There will never be a real relationship between a Rebbe and a Talmid unless there are times when the Rebbe is willing to reveal his stuff and his humanity to the student. And when that happens, I think some of us may have even had this experience in one way or another, you don't lose respect. You gain respect. You gain respect. Because you start to realize, oh my gosh, this is a person like I'm a person. And afal pikin, even so, look at what this person devotes their life to. Look at how much effort and they also struggle and they also, etc., etc. Usually that increases respect, doesn't take away respect. But it would appear to be a huge risk, to take on the part of the mashpia. Because they're so used to all the time showing up in such a way where people think that they're perfect that they're afraid. And he says something very precious is lost which is the Or HaYichud HaAmiti B'neihem, which is the light of true intimacy. That it can never be present all the while that there's a fundamental gap between the Mekabelim and the Mashpiim, right? Between the students and the teacher. All the while that there's that gap, so then something's missing. Something's missing. Sha'al Piha Arizal, that according to the Holy Arizal, Yachal Lehi Asais, this light of true unity can only be accomplished, Daika, again, same thing, Bihiyaisa Kaimasam Shave, when there's something equal. Now, he's quick to point out in the parentheses here, Pshita, it's obvious, now, even though, let's say, they take a walk together through the park and the Rebbe is opening up, and telling him about his own life and explaining to him that things aren't always what they appear, and etc., and making the student feel like the student's not alone and that he knows what the student is struggling with, and etc., all this stuff. Nahir l'Talmud, he said it always has to be, and it always will be clear to the student, Shaharav Gadol Himenu B'Mala, right? That at the end of the day, this is still a Rebbe, right? This is still a Rav, this is still a Rosh Hashiva, this is still a Talmud Chacham, this is still maybe a tzaddik in certain ways. This is still someone who's like fundamentally in position of influence and power and not power, but like in position of hashpah, right? Of teaching and someone that's worthy of respect. Right? And that has to be clear. Meaning that element doesn't have to be lost for there to be true intimacy, where all of a sudden, so then he's no longer your Rebbe, he's your friend. And to the degree that you gained respect for him in one area, but then taka, you lose respect for him from the other standpoint, because who is he to teach me now? Because he struggles with the same thing I struggle, let's say, right? Something like that. He says, no, that's not good. That's not good, right? And it has to be clear to the student that irrespective of what the person is revealing, there's still a difference. This person's older, this person's more experienced, this person's more learned, this person's put in more effort, this person, whatever it is, right? And that still, like all these things can be true at once, right? So it doesn't mean all of a sudden it equals the level, the playing field, and that, from the standpoint of us being able to assume that every Rav, has issues and deals with stuff and challenges, so all of a sudden nobody's worthy of respect anymore, right? That isn't the case. V'lo hefach li as ben dargasai, right? It's not as if all of a sudden a parent reveals a little bit to the child at a moment of honesty that they are also struggling with something, whatever it is, and now the parent is not a parent and the child is not a child. That structure is maintained. Again, when the pauper sees that in some sense the person that's in a position of giving funds actually needs the ani in the same way that the ani needs the ashir, because of that, he doesn't start to think so that all of a sudden he's exactly the same, and that there's no difference in this standpoint of, let's say, societal standing, financial standing between the two, because, I need something, he needs something. Well, let's be honest, this person is a schlepper in the street, and this person, for whatever reason, is in a big house and, is in position to give. So, meaning there is a difference between them. And again, it's important for those differences to be maintained. Right, so he's pointing out you don't have to sacrifice the structure of like the general structure of respect or hierarchy for there to be the light of Yichud, right? For there to be a moment of honesty where the relationship goes beyond sort of just, again, this one serving their practical purpose of giving a service and the other one receiving a service. There's something deeper here. And the depth is, again, being revealed specifically when, let's say, a Rebbe lets a student know that as much as the student thinks he's gaining from the teacher, the teacher lets the student know that he gains so much from the student. But really, for real, that's a vulnerability, right? That's not all, sort of like alpha male, and whatever, like I don't macho and I don't need anybody else. No, that's saying, wow, like I really care. To say to a student, to say to a Rebbe, to a student, I really care about you, And then there's a real relationship, because it becomes clear to the student that the student means something, and that's the light of Yichud. There's a relationship there. There's a relationship. That's what he's getting at. Ela'ata. So again, nachadaitai. But what it does accomplish is nachadaitai. There's a certain peace of mind that be'emes, right, lekabel me'anoisein, to be able to receive with more yishav hadas, not to feel awkward about it, not to feel that I'm always in the position of receiving. It doesn't feel good to be like that. But to know, okay, wow, like there's something deeper here. And that makes it a lot easier and a lot healthier from the standpoint of the person who's receiving. Again, through this, that he was strengthening the position of the student, building up their sense of self, building up their value, letting them know how precious they are, right? And all comes back to HaHisbodedus. This is what we're supposed to be hearing, right? When we walk into HaHisbodedus, you're not coming to ask God for something. You hear God asking you for something. You have to recognize you're giving, right? And that's the relationship where right now it's friendship. It's not creator, creation. It's not king, subject. It's not even father and daughter, right? It's two friends. And we're learning about what's friends. What does it mean real friendship? Is this. I receive from Hashem, and this is the very radical thing, Hashem receives from me. And it gives something to Hashem. It gives something to Hashem. When a Jew takes off from all the distractions and all the different, mundane things that we spend so much of our time on, and we give an hour, we give a half hour, we give 20 minutes, we give 10 minutes, 5 minutes, we give 3 minutes, less than 3 minutes, I'm not so sure. Let's say you give 3 minutes, but I'm kidding, you can do 30 seconds. You give 3 minutes to Hashem, consciously though, not because you happen to be. Take 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and it's intentional. Shut the phone, and you go off by yourself. It's in a room somewhere, you close the door, it's in nature, all the better. And you're spending time with Hashem. And of course you're going to ask Hashem for things, and you're going to talk out your day, and of course you gain from that. But what we're learning here now is that in order for there to be a light of intimacy, which is only possible when there's a sense of equal footing in the relationship, that's everything that we've been learning, you first have to hear, even before you open your mouth, is Hashem not being able to contain himself for joy at what you're giving him, which is literally fulfilling the purpose of the world, like we've mentioned at length in the previous shiurim. This is why the human was created, to reveal Hashem's infinite godliness even here in a realm of limit and concealment. And how do we do that? Prayer. Adam and Chava, again we'll repeat, were created to pray. That was the problem, right? There was no rain, and the rain didn't fall because there was nobody to recognize that rain was needed and to daven for the rain. And so prayer is literally, Rashi tells us that is why the human was created. That is why Am Yisrael are here, to be a prayerful people, Gesundheit, to be a people that's filled with faith, that's filled with humility, that's filled with recognizing that there's more to life than being schlepped into the Olam Hazeh illusion. And you can take 3 minutes off, and you can separate yourself, and you won't get anything for it. It's an amazing thing. Nobody will pat you on the back. You won't get a award, for best davener, a sticker. You won't get anything. No one knows about it. It's not impressive. You won't be able to show someone what you accomplished. But it's just real. It's just you take a couple of minutes off and spend it with your Creator. What you need to be hearing in that moment, again, before you ask, is recognizing that in as much as you're receiving, you have to recognize how you're giving. You have to recognize, and that's Hashem building up our sense of self, our confidence. Unbelievable thing. I'll just mention, we're learning with one of the chaburas that we're learning with during the week. We're learning a piece from Reb Nassan in Likutei Halachos. Reb Nassan in Hilchos Rosh Chodesh says the most remarkable thing. He's speaking there about a very specific kind of HaHisbodedus that refers to turning Torah into tefillah. Very, very deep thing that Rabbi Nachman taught his students that they should do. He was the first one to reveal this concept that the pinnacle of learning is not just to learn it, to understand it, but to then be able to turn what you learned into a tefillah. So the minute you learn something, now go and talk to Hashem about, help me accomplish this, because I don't just want my Torah learning to be just academic. The whole point is that I want it to change me. That's what Torah is. It's terrible that they translate Torah as law, in the secular world and other religions. They translate Torah as like the law. It's not the law. Horah is not law. It's guidance, right? It means it's something that we're supposed to onboard. It's something that's supposed to guide us, right? It's Horah. So the whole purpose is that I want to live the Torah. Tzaddik be'emunasa yichya, right? Says Rav Nassan, based on Rabbi Nachman, turn it into tefillah. Everything you learn, right away. Now you have what to daven about. And the whole Sefer Likutei Tefillos that Rav Nassan wrote is a huge collection of original prayers. There's nothing quite like it. Translated into English as a set of Svarim called the 50th Gate. If you ever want to peek into it, it's remarkable. And Reb Nosson did exactly this. He turned every single teaching in Likutei Moharan into a prayer. So now, whenever you learn anything from Rabbi Nachman in the Sefer, you open a Likutei Tfilos that corresponds, and right away he gave you the words to daven what you learned. That it shouldn't just remain intellectual, you want to bring it down into your heart. Says Reb Nosson over there, as part of a very, very long and glorious teaching, Reb Nosson says over there that this is the whole thing with Yaakov and Rachel and Leah. He says, without going into the whole Kabbalistic depth, Rachel and Leah share the same aspect. They're all the Bechina, the aspect of Malchus. Okay, the energy of Malchus. Malchus is an energy of receiving, right? It's correlated to the moon that receives the light of the sun, doesn't have a light of its own, but it's receiving and reflecting in a more perfect way. That's the energy of Malchus. And it also has to do with speech. Malchus peh, the Tikkun Zera says, Torah Shabal Peh Karina, it has to do with speech. It has to do with Torah Shabal Peh. So generally speaking, Yaakov Avinu is Torah Shabiksav, and Rachel / Leah is Torah Shabal Peh. But says Reb Nosson, the most brilliant thing, he says, well, Malchus in this aspect has two facets. One of the facets of Malchus is Torah Shabal Peh, like we just mentioned, right? Vis-a-vis Torah Shabiksav, which is again Yaakov Avinu, and then he's married, so to speak, Torah Shabiksav, married to Torah Shabal Peh. But also, what else do we do with our mouth? Is tefillah, right? It's to daven to Hashem. See, he says the most amazing thing. He says you have Rachel and Leah. What do we know about Rachel in the pasuk? Rachel is the beautiful one, right? Rachel is the one that Yaakov wants to marry, that he works for 7 years times 7, right? Plus 7. He's working for day and night. And Leah, the pasuk says, "Ve'ena Leah rachais," right? She was busy the whole time crying, and she was wasn't catching Yaakov's eye, right? Rachel, Leah rather. See, he says, you know what it is? Rachel, he says, is Torah Shabal Peh. That's learning Gemara. That's being a big Talmud Chacham. That's being a big sophisticated, religious philosopher. A person knows all these big ideas. Very beautiful. Why? Because it's impressive, and that everybody will you'll get a lot of kavod, and you'll get a lot of whatever it is, and the positions and money and everything, and everybody wants to be so be a big Talmud Chacham, be a big Rebbetzin. It's more relevant for the men, But this is the idea. Is a very this is what you want to spend your time on. You want to learn, and it should be something that everybody respects. He says, why wasn't Leah so beautiful? Because the pasuk says that she was crying all the time. Why was she crying all the time, says Rashi? Because she thought that she's going to have to marry Esav. Says Reb Nosson, this is prayer, this is tefillah. That the whole time her tears were tears of tefillah. She was crying, Hashem, let me not fall into the portion of Esav. He says, what, you think Leah is the only one, davened, that she shouldn't fall into the portion of Esav? Every tefillah that we ask Hashem to save us from the Yetzer Hara is Leah's tefillah. That we're crying, let me not fall into the portion of Esau. It's the same thing, right? That we shouldn't be wed and married to Olam Hazeh, to externalities, to Aliteni Nam and Adam Hazeh. Esau runs and sells away spirituality, the B'chaira, the Kahuna, the everything for some lentil soup, And we're davening, Hashem, please, I don't want to be wed to that, right? That's not what I want to be married to, so to speak. So Leah's tefillah. And he says, Yaakov Avinu made the mistake of wanting Rachel. Yaakov Avinu, again, on his madrega, didn't recognize the preciousness of Leah because it doesn't look so nice. Right? It's not so impressive on the surface. A person goes out and spends hours in the forest. What did they accomplish, Sachakol? What did, show me something. Like, what did you really gain? Now, it's very difficult to show on a this worldly level what you gained, but what kind of person you become, right? When you take the time out to invest in spirituality, that dafka isn't the kind of spirituality that can be measured by this worldliness, that you accomplish this amount and you finish this masech, you can make a big siyam and everybody's so proud of you and whatever it is. No, that's Leah. So Yaakov misunderstood. And then you know what happens, the most amazing thing. Rachel gives the simanim to Leah, which means, in the way that he's learning, Rachel, which is Torah Shabal Peh, knows that it's not the ultimate purpose. If there's value in Torah, it's just because Torah gives us something to daven about. It's that everything that we learn in the Gemara, everything that we learn in the Medrash, everything that we learn in Halacha is there so that it gives us something to strive toward and something to daven about. But the pinnacle of Judaism is not the learning. Lo yalimudu ha'ikar, right? The main thing is the Maisa, and the Maisa, the doing of it, takes a lot of prayer. It's not easy to do. So it's almost as if the whole purpose of the Gemara, the whole purpose of Rachel, right, in this context, is for Leah. So Rachel gives the simanim to Leah. That's what's going on there. Rachel transfers the value that Yaakov placed on her. He says, no, it goes to Leah. Leah is the main thing is Leah. And he says that's why Leah is the one who has all the children, not Rachel. Leah is the one who just has all the shvatim. Why? Because the Iker, he says the primary progeny, we learned already from Noach, the primary offspring of a tzaddik, is Ma'asim Tovim, is good deeds. And Leah is representing, what the primary good deeds of a Talmid Chacham is not how many times you can finish Shas. It's very beautiful. But anybody, anybody, quote unquote, could sit and could learn. You have a brain and you're able to do it. But that's not what closest to Hashem means. That's not what's producing the Peiros. What's producing the Shvatim is Leah, right? What's bringing offspring, Ma'asim Tovim, is Leah. A Leah that was wed to Yaakov through the simanim of Rachel, because Rachel is the Torah that needs to be turned into tefillah. Mind-blowing, right? That's how Reb Nassim presents this dynamic between Yaakov and Rachel and so on. So again, the main thing is tefillah, how much we give Hashem when we turn to Him in tefillah. That's the first thing we hear, because it's supposed to be the relationship of a friend. And again, like we're saying, it's going to be lopsided if we don't feel that we're giving as much as we're getting. That's a real relationship, right? That's a real relationship. Okay. Let's go a little bit further now, okay? And we take a look at Oisvav. B'dibure shevach v'ritzoy upius mehev alev hamakabel el hanosein. Now, in these words of praise and ritzoy and letting him know how much we desire this connection, this relationship with pius, mehev alev hamakabel el hanosein, that's coming forth from the makabel, the recipient, el hanosein, to the one who's giving. Yesh lahav nisoid gadol. We have to understand, what is it that we come to Hashem when we say praises to Hashem? The beginning of Shemana Esrei, the first few brachas, Hakel Hagadol Hagibel Va'anayra, which we learn, the Gemara tells us from Moshe Rabbeinu, who was davening for Miriam, right? Remember, and he said, Kel na Rafal na la, right? So first he says Kel, first he praises Hashem, Kel na, he asks, and then Rafal na la. So first we begin with praise. What's the whole thing about this idea of praising Hashem? So he says, Shehina yesh amira hamivtas ach v'rakas mashenemar ba. There's a certain kind of statement where a person says something, and what they say is exactly what they're saying. And that's it. Right? The words that they say are the words that they're saying. Meaning, Kagain, for example, Anachnu l'chanos. Goes back to the mashal we were giving before. A person goes into a kosher kingdom, a person goes into a store. Umavakesh sheyavu davar pliny, and you ask the person if he knows where they keep the soup nuts. So whatever it is, you ask for a certain thing. Where's the milk? Inamavakesh lavate shum davar acher. Like you have no deeper intention. You just literally want some soup nuts. Like that's it, And that's what you're asking for, and that's what you mean. That's what you're saying. Zulas masha amar b'poil b'milim sheishama. He doesn't want anything other than the actual words that he said. But sometimes there's a way when a person says something, there are words that have a simple meaning, and they mean what they mean on the surface. But if you're listening very carefully, you're able to hear something much deeper than what's being said on the surface. Derech mashal, for example. When a child walks into, comes into the house, let's say, I'm always thinking in my own life, so Shmuel comes home from school, and he just runs into the dining room, and of course he drops his stuff all over the floor, so his shoes, and then his bag, and then his coat, and here he is, and I'm sitting at the dining room table. And he comes to tell me something about his day. And the father's heart is just bursting with love and adoration for this precious soul. Just from the very fact, irrespective of what the kid has to say, is the fact that the kid is saying it to me, right? That the kid is excited to come in and say it to me. So I hear something much deeper than just the words that he's saying. Hopefully I'm also hearing the words that he's saying. But what we're hearing is like, wow, I'm his Abba, and he's excited to tell me about his day. It's a precious thing. I'm hearing something deeper than just the words. So the father's heart is exploding out of the great love from just the fact that, wow, that's what's going on here. It's like there's a premise for this that the kid wants to speak to the father. So darga shahayelad ba b'sipur dvarim. So over here you have where the kid comes in saying something out of his mouth, but really it's saying something much deeper, right? So again, the kid is saying something, but underlying that is the connection that the kid feels for the father. And he might not be saying it in that many words. It's like, wow, I really love you. Like saying to the father, like I'm so thrilled that you're my Abba, that I have an Abba that I can come and tell my day to. That he's not saying that, but Gevaltus, he's saying that. Like he's mamish saying that because that's what he's doing. And there's nobody else in the world that he wants to tell about his day than his parents. And that's really what he's saying, right? So there's the words, and then there's what's going on beyond the surface. Va'av, so the father Shemea is hearing inyan dak pnimi, something very delicate, something very gentle. Acher legamri, something completely different. Now, achiyesh darga nosefes, but there's an even deeper level. And the deeper level is as follows. Shahayelad yodea kama yem elev aviv bihi yoser bolafana l'sapar l'me'inin nafshe. The child gets a little bit older, and maybe the child has friends that he can tell about his day. And it's not like the only person that he has in the world is his father. Could be. But he knows how much pleasure the father takes from this, that he comes and tells him about his day, even though he has any number of people that he doesn't really need it as much as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, There's other people that he could speak to about his day. Maybe he's at a point where he doesn't have to speak about his day to anybody and he'll just figure his stuff out. But he knows that how much pleasure it brings the father. Va'al kain, and therefore magia milichatchila ledaber avar tachlasu. And so to fulfill this, which is not spoken, it's the underlying message, but to fulfill the underlying message, that's why he goes and tells the dad about his day. And the dad, right, who's conscious of this, hears the words, but it's much, much deeper than whatever words and whatever events the kid is telling over about what happened in the playground, whatever happened that day and what he learned about is much deeper. He's hearing the relationship. And this is something else. Because in the previous situation, the father is hearing something deeper, but the kid didn't necessarily mean to convey that. The kid is saying what the kid is saying. Now the father is hearing something deeper. In this circumstance, the father is hearing the deeper thing, and the kid is intending to communicate the deeper thing, just using different words. That's a whole different thing, right? So it turns out that from both the side of the father and the side of the child, it was never really about the words that are being spoken. The words are like a Trojan horse. They're just like an outside shell that contain within them what's really trying to be communicated. And sometimes it's a little bit awkward, maybe whatever it is. The kids, especially boys, are not so likely to express their emotions, freely. But that's what the kid means to convey. They can't always find the right words for it, so he chooses some other words. But that's his primary intention, and the father understands that. That's something else. So instead of being able to express to the father how grateful the son is to the father, how much the son loves the father, how much he loves spending time with him, he finds something, politics that the dad is interested in, and now he goes and has a conversation about politics. He cares about the politics, the father cares about the politics. Sure, they're discussing politics on the surface, but that's not what's going on. What's going on is that a father is spending time with his son, and the son is spending time with the father, and that's actually what's happening. That's really what's happening. But neither of them can quite come up with the words to say that, but that's really what's taking place. And that's what's important here to both of them. That's really what's happening. So he says, he found some other words to use, to strike up a conversation. And he's not using his actual mouth to express the milim pnimius, those deeper inner words. Right? right? That come from the depth of the heart, of his heart, which are going to be able to go and reach the deepest part of the father's heart. Right? So he doesn't come home from school and say, Hinni bincha yichidcha asher ahavta, like I'm here, your son, right? It comes from last week's parasha, your beloved, your singular son who you love. And only in you, I trust you, and you means the world to me. Imagine if every son did this. He came home from high school, from Hasmo, and comes to the father and says, Dad, like, I just love you. Never happened and never will happen until Mashiach comes, But this, so imagine. So that's not what's happening, right? That I trust you, legalis lefanecha libiu mistari nafshi. I'm coming to, maybe like Shakespeare's son spoke this way. I don't know, some poet, that to reveal to you my deepest inner whisperings of my heart. He doesn't say that. So he comes and he's speaking to the father just about things that happened to him during the day, and whatever went on. But again, but the father understands the depth of what the son really means to communicate. Because if the son didn't mean to communicate it, especially as the kids get a bit older, they won't communicate. They won't communicate at all. Forget about they won't communicate that. They'll stop speaking because they don't need you, right? And Ba'etzim, they don't really need you. You understand? But because they have their friends and they have their social media and they have their online and whatever it is. But in this, that the kid is saying anything to the parent, that's what they're saying. Even though they can't come up with the words to say it. That's really what it means, is that they just really want to hang out they really want to spend time with you, for real. So the father understands this. Yodeas oimek haben shemeskaven bekach lahashmiya. That this is what the son means to convey. He didn't just come again to speak about whatever, fill in the blank, football, let's say, whatever it is. Ella as hemyasam hapnimis, he meant to communicate his deep love and his yearning and longing for the father. So how much more so will the father feel, right, and reflect this love, right, which goes beyond what we said in the first case, right, where the son doesn't necessarily mean to express that, but the father hears that, but the son doesn't mean to express that. But imagine if, like we said, maybe adjust the parable so the kid is a little bit older, where it's clear to the father that that's what the kid means. That's what the kid means. But he won't, say those exact words. But the love that exists. How much the father is going to be feeling love for this child. Nimsa, so it emerges, sheyesh kan safas razim bein shnayim. There is a secret language between the two. That even though on the surface somebody else hears two people talking, he doesn't know the depth that this is a father, this is a son, and it takes so much to get them, together, communicating in this way. He doesn't know. It's two people speaking about football. He won't hear it. But between the two of them, there's a secret here, right? There's a mystery. Hashemeas hamilim, again, a person who just hears the words that are being exchanged, yachalitais can make the mistake of thinking shemedubra al milim kipshutam, that they're speaking about whatever they happen to be speaking about. Biram libam haime berikshas pinimios, but he doesn't know that their hearts are inflamed with much deeper feelings. Hayiduis rak beinam lebeinam, which is really only known between them. Zar la yava b'saydam, and nobody will be able to get in the way to understand, what exists between this parent and this child. Kederach shayiksuvim michtavim be'eretz oyev, right? And he brings like a parable, a metaphor, like people communicate beyond the enemy lines. Shehim noikdim simanim kodim, right? Code, right? The communicating code. There's a code that exists between these two. Hamuskamim bein hashnayim, that this is what they've decided, that for whatever reason they're not comfortable expressing themselves fully. Halavai they should. Halavai, a parent should be able to express him or herself fully to the child, and the child should be able to reciprocate. Achitov, halavai, it would be that way. But it's almost as if this is where their comfort is, right? The child is comfortable expressing the love and the reliance and the adoration and the gratitude in this way, and the parent is also but that's really what both of them are feeling. That only the people on the giving end of typing the code and the people who are receiving the code, only they know it. and no one else will be able to pick this thing up and understand the letter, what it says. Right? Right? The people who are censoring the letters and going through them, that they're speaking about something and doesn't know that there's a hidden code. See, he says this is what it means to praise Hashem. It's unbelievably deep. You think God needs your praise, Hashem is perfect. What does God need that you should come and tell him how great he is? What's going on there? And the whole time in Shemoneh Esrei we're praising Hashem and they're constantly giving thanks to Hashem and what a big deal it is, right? To ulazamar l'shimcha elyon. He says, this is the real secret of the praise that the Mekabel, which is in this case us, right? Am Yisrael, the Jewish person, is praising the Noisin, is praising the giver, which is Hashem. Sha'amnam yeshlem games hamashmas hapshuta. You're right, on a surface level, you can translate Shemoneh Esrei, and this is what we're saying to Hashem. You're the Gadol, you're Gibar, you're Noira, Mechayim Mesim, Roifich Cholim, Samich Noiflim, Matar Asurim. All these different things we're praising Hashem. And that's what it looks like, again, on the surface, you can translate it simply. And that's true. Just to translate what it means, right? You're praising God. But in the deepest way of understanding this, it's so much deeper than this. And God doesn't hear the praise. These are just the words that we use. God hears, and hopefully is present. It's the intention behind the words, which is something completely different. That's what God is after. God doesn't need the praise, doesn't take away, doesn't add. But you know what does add? Is the Jew showing up in such a way, just the very fact that the person receiving shows up to praise. It's not the praise. These are just words that Hashem gave us to be able to bring ourselves into the context of a relationship with Him, to let Him know how much we are in awe of this opportunity to stand in His presence. And we can't always find the right words to say that. So we say, Akel, Gadol, Gibar, V'Nair. But what are we doing when we do that? We don't have to do that. So don't daven Shemoneh Esrei. So what does God hear? What Hashem is hearing, and this is what He cares about, so to speak. This is what, quote unquote, He gains, because Rachmana libabai. God doesn't need your lip service. Hashem needs the heart. Hashem needs you, not what you can do or what you can say or what you can learn or what you can do. And what Hashem needs is you, like we've said in the past. Gesundheit. So what Hashem hears when we say Gadol Gibar V'Naira is the Jew saying, this relationship means so much to me. And I recognize how precious it is to be standing in the presence of the Gadol and the Gibar and the Naira. That's what God hears, and that means something. Because it's a relationship. It's a relationship. It's unbelievable. That's what Hashem hears. There's a much higher, there's a much more interior interpretation. That the Mekabel, the recipient, just brought themselves to spend time with the giver. Just to be there and to say his praise. Zehu diber pnimi l'loy milim. This is something that is happening in an exchange on the level of a heart and mind that goes beyond words. The words are not expressing these feelings, but those are the feelings. Those are the feelings behind the words. And you can only know this if you relate to Hashem on the level of friendship. Otherwise, Shemoneh Esrei is just reading words off a page, and you're standing in the throne room, and this megalomaniac, king needs to hear everybody praising him all the time because he's an egomaniac, right? Chas v'shalom. But if we show up with a concept of Hashem in the aspect of everything we've been learning, I think this is our 18th shir, so Chai, is full of life. So everything we've been learning is really to bring Hashem and our relationship with Him to life. Now, what is Hashem? Hashem is just a delicate lover, right? Like a beloved. He's our best friend in the world. So then it takes on a whole different mashma'ut. It takes on a whole different meaning. Hakel hagibar v'anoira. Again, it's not me, tiny little me, singing the praise of the infinite God. It's me as God's beloved, taking time out of my day to spend time with Him. And He just loves that. And that's what He hears when I'm saying it, and it's so precious to Him. Zehu dibar pnimi l'loy milim. This is a deeper way of expressing l'loy milim. It's not with words, this. Al dvar kirva mufla'im shebenehem. About this, that there's such a deep, deep, deep love between these two. You should understand this is the meaning of all the praises that we sing to Hashem. Like the whole first part of Shacharis, right? The bulk of Shacharis is Pesukei de Zimra. It's all full of us praising Hashem, us Yashir. We're thanking Hashem, all of this. That on the surface, the words mean what they mean, and they're true. But sheyesh bem oimik pnimi. But there's a deeper meaning. That the Mekabel is coming before Hashem, the Noisein, the giver, with such words of ritzui, of supplication, and like such pleasant, convincing words. That beyond their simple and very holy meaning, they also say something deeper. That if I came before you, the king, right? If I came before you, Hashem, and I'm speaking your praise, and I'm singing Pesukei de Zimra, and Baruch Sha'amar, and Ashrei, and the Hallelujahs, and Vayivarech David, and Az Yashar, and I'm spending time out of my day saying all of this, not because I'm checking it off the list, because I don't need to do that, you know? It's because I'm really in it for real. Because there's such a deep, deep bond between us. And I gain from you, and you gain from me, and it's a real relationship. Diber amok zeh, this incredibly deep kind of communication, hu hama'oris leiv hanoisin. This stirs the heart of the giver. Lifrois kanfechem lase ala makabel, that he should want also to give. That he should also, because he's receiving, and now he also wants to give. And then the doors open up on both ends. And there's intimacy. V'yesh b'zasoid ishi razim, right? And this is this very intimate, personal secret. Razim, a secret of secrets. Beinoisin mashpia, that exists between the giver and the mashpia, and I think it should say mushpa, right? The one that's receiving. Rak lev Yehudi v'koini is baruch yishmu v'yishma'u es ha'rachash ha'pnimi hazeh. Only the heart of a Jew and the Creator are guaranteed to hear this deep whisper. Shemisbati derech milu mikarim shel shvach, that are being like sort of carried along by the vessels of the words of Pesukei de Zimra, but that's not really what I'm saying, right? So it's important to know the meaning of the words. Obviously, it's a good start. But it's even more important to know that the meaning of the words are not really the meaning of what's happening here. The meaning of what's happening here is that I just am absolutely in love with Hashem. Absolutely head over heels, obsessed with Hashem, and I take time out of my day to spend time with Him. Whatever words I say, it's not important, right? It happens to be this is what the Anshe Knesset Gedolah said we should say these words, and they have Kabbalistic import and all the different meanings and how it changes the world when I say these exact words. But that's not where it's at. Where it's at is the ability to use these words to communicate something so much deeper than what the words say, which is just, I'm so happy to be here. And what we hear Hashem saying back, like we learned in previous classes, what were the words, remember, that Hashem uses? Tov Shabbata, right? I'm so happy you came. I'm so happy you're here. It means the world to me, that you're spending time with me. I'm so lonely, so Kiviyachal, Hashem is, like we've said, Hashem is all alone. Hashem created us. He wants a relationship with us. We think, again, that we're all the time taking. And we need to start to understand that we give, we really give. We really give. And in that moment, the giving and the receiving, it's ba'im ka'achas, it's one. It's one. And that's a friendship, where it's not this technical thing like, okay, now I'm giving, and now he's giving, and now, no, it's a real relationship where just both of you gain, right, from spending time with each other. It's not this thing like a person makes a calculation. Was it even? Like, did I get exactly as much as I gave? It's not. It's just, understand. It's a friendship. It's something else. You just enjoy spending time with a person. It's something else. And both of you gain. Both of you gain. It's something deeper. It's a real relationship. The kavanasam apnimi, so only the Jew and only the Creator will hear this interior kavana, kvusha b'soich hamilim, that's completely hidden underneath the facade of the words of mi'ira mi beinoisam, but which is shining forth from between all of them. To read in between the lines is this light of what tefillah actually is, which is much more than what the words say. Right? What tefillah really is I can't hold myself back from spending time with you, Hashem. And this is how I spend time with you, is the sitter, and then HaHisbodedus, right? Bekach, we'll finish with this. Bekach ma'iras ahava ad shetechba'atz. This wakes up the heart. This wakes up the love. When a person has this intention, my relationship with Hashem is deeper than just davening for stuff, And it's certainly deeper than just saying a bunch of words that I don't know what they mean out of a sitter because I'll feel super guilty if I don't daven. Like that, it's not what it is. It's a love affair. Amish, a love affair. The deepest romance. And then the giver, having received from the Makabel, right, and having gotten sort of the affirmation that he needs kiviyachal, the togetherness that he feels, the love that the father feels because the kid expresses love toward the father, and what the father gains from that. Because Hashem makes himself vulnerable. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows up with his lack, kiviyachal, and says, come, like there's place for you. I need you. It's not arbitrary. So when that happens, then the giver can give much more fully. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you'll hear Hashem whispering back, and then there's a real relationship that's created. And then all the bracha in the world, all the shefa, all the blessing, all the gates are open. We'll take questions in a minute. All the gates are open and just flow down into your life. Shekol kach oirurai, because we've awoken, so to speak, Hashem so much in a real way that it's not transactional, but really we've gotten to his heart, as it were. And it makes it super clear to Hashem that we don't have anyone else to rely on. And all the while that we show up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sort of like 1 foot in, but also 1 foot on all of our hishtadlus, so like if this doesn't work out, like we still have all these contingency plans, so then we're not opening the door all the way. But when we come into tefillah with this in mind, that not just I don't have anywhere else to turn but Hashem, but I don't have anything else but Hashem. I don't have anything, right? That He is my whole life. And that connecting to Him in moments of tefillah are the reason that my soul was put into this body, is to be able to escape a little bit from this world and to say some words to Hashem, to make Him real, so to speak, by contacting Him, communicating with Him. So He's real because you talk to Him, you make Him real, right? And you reveal His light in this world. So from that standpoint, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu really realizes, like, wow, this person really needs me, for real. And then there's this symbiotic relationship where there's the equal footing, like we mentioned before, and then there's true intimacy that's built from this. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, we did get pretty far. We'll pick it up from Os Zayin next week, Be'ezus Hashem, and then we'll just do 2 minutes for questions. Yeah, if anybody have questions.
How does Hashem show us His lack?
So we've mentioned in previous classes that the main way that Hashem communicates anything, because God doesn't speak in emails and WhatsApps like we like regular. It would be so great if you did. Maybe one day you'll get a WhatsApp from God and that would be like the end or the beginning. But Hashem communicates through the tzaddikim. Hashem communicates through Ruach HaKodesh, through people, prophets, right? And then later on, the tzaddikim, that we don't know anything about God other than those who were communicating messages about Him. The whole Torah relies on the tzaddikim, Torah Shabbal Pez, all, right? It's the Masorah that we have. And so what Rav Kluger is revealing is that later on in history, especially Rabbi Nachman, the Baal Shem Tov, there were tzaddikim close to our time who started speaking a different language about Hashem and letting us know this, that Hashem needs us in a way, right? Not in a fundamental aspect, but the way that God set up the world is that He wants a relationship with us that's Shir HaShirim, that's Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, right? Where it's equal, right? He is to us and we are to Him. And so Rav Kluger is helping to train us to sort of know that, believe that, and then hear that, because we don't know anything else about Hashem other than what we learn in the Sfarim. And so he's revealing to us a new way of sort of hearing Hashem communicate to us. And that's this new identity that Hashem allowed to be revealed in the later generations, because we need it more than anything. Remember the first class we gave, we're at the Ne'ilah of history. This is it. And so we need the greatest light to help us hold on in the darkest pitch black darkness. We need the greatest light. And that light is the light of this layer of the relationship, which is the deepest and the most pnimi. It's way beyond. It's the essence of all other relationships that still exist, like we've made clear. Hashem is still our king, he's still our father, he's still the creator, but also he's our best friend. And that's what the tzaddikim are trying to help us to hear, right? And they're the ones that are revealing this secret to us.
שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי, מלך חי וקיים, על כל נשימה שאני נושם.